feel like every year, gaming keeps getting a bit better. Despite how many people you find on the internet saying that gaming is dying or gaming isn't as good as they were back in the old days, I find myself disagreeing with them. Why? Well, because there are so many great games that released this year, far more than bad. Yes, there have been some major flops like Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League, Alone in the Dark and Concord, but just look at this on screen. Those are undeniably great games. So once again, I'll be ranking the best games that I played this year, from new game releases released this year, old games I never got around to playing before, to games that I've replayed. Why, you may be wondering? For one, it's always fun to talk about games from the past, and two, I can't afford buying every major 70 to 80 euro release. And on another note, on screen right now are just some games from 2024 that I think would have made this list, but I haven't played them or beaten them yet. So with that said, let's start out with some honorable mentions. I've got 4 games that narrowly missed the list. It's tough to not have them on the list, but I do recommend these 4 games. We've got 3 great indie games with Rusty's Retirement and Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk, and Blind Drive. Rusty's Retirement is the first idle game that I played, and its lo-fi feel and unique concept of hovering above the foreground of your PC makes it very easy to just sit back, work or study and check in on the game once in a while. On the other side of cozy, we've got Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk. Man, that's a handful to say out loud. Being an incredible horror visual novel with such an uncanny feel. However, I only wish it were longer. There's also Blind Drive, which is a game that took me on an incredible audio experience, as the game has no visuals. It's super impressive how the game managed to create a world and story only through audio, and for the final honorable mention, it's one of the biggest breakout hits of the year, Helldivers 2. I'm not much of a multiplayer guy, but man is this game just fun. No other words, it's just fun to hop on with some friends and game for a few hours. Oh, and also a quick shout out to Pokemon TCG Pocket. Fun mobile game. Now, with these games out of the way, let's start off with the list. You know, if you were to tell me that I would have a Zelda game not crack the top 10 of the best games I've played list, I would not believe you. Not saying that Echoes of Wisdom is bad, because it isn't, it's just missing that flair, you know? No, me either. It's a great top-down Zelda adventure where we finally get to play as Zelda herself. What makes her adventure stand out from Link's is how much more puzzle-oriented it is. Everything in this game is a puzzle, from overworld traversal to combat, thanks to Zelda's Echo ability, which lets her clone almost anything and use them as she pleases. Surrounded by enemies, summon a bokoblin. Can't cross this big gap? Stack a load of beds. That's what I think really sells this game, that whole puzzle aspect, which I think perfectly translates that do whatever you want mantra from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in a top-down game. Game is a bit lacking in story in my opinion, as it's not as engaging as other Zeldas, and the near constant frame rate drops are very noticeable, at least on my Switch, but hey, at least we got more great Zelda music to listen to. Take everything I said about Echoes of Wisdom and add it here for Cocoon. Major difference being that you remove the open-ended puzzle structure and make it only one answer. Doesn't that take away player freedom? Well, yes, but that's where the best puzzle games really shine. To create puzzles with one solution, you have to simplify what the player can do so that the player is forced to learn what the capabilities of their avatar are. Portal is a great example, but Cocoon is almost as good. Your only form of interaction apart from moving is picking stuff up. However, the game builds a lot of puzzles around this simple movement, with gimmicks that spice up the gameplay, and some of the solutions are incredibly simple, like really simple. However, no matter how simple they are, the soothing audio design and how the world evolves makes you feel proud of yourself. Cocoon's also got this unnerving feel to it, with a very distinct art style, and the fact that you can enter and leave different worlds. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that entering and leaving worlds are also used for the puzzles. It's a short game too, so have fun with it. Sometimes 3D platformers blend into another by being collectathons in this big open space, having a very similar gameplay loop. Now imagine you take away the core movement option of a 3D platformer, the jump button. That is what Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom is. It's a 3D platformer without the jumping. There are ways for you to gain vertical height, but the game doesn't tell you it outright. You have to experiment to figure out how to do it, and this game is extremely experimental and just straight up stupid, but in the best way possible. You got a character called Morio, and the evil company is called Tosla, and the many worlds are literal fever dreams. It's a fun romp, if that's the right word, because it's so fun to mess around with the game's physics and so many secrets to find in the many worlds. One of the best indie 3D platformers out there. Mario might have been an inspiration behind Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, but it's not Mario's platforming that finds himself on this list. It is RPG adventure. Not his latest adventure, but a remake of his first one. I first played Super Mario RPG on the Wii U eShop back many years ago and loved it, and this remake from 2023 really does the game justice. Better visuals, smooth controls, incredibly remade soundtrack, and some fun new additions like new boss fights makes this game a worth revisiting if you haven't played it yet, or a great start for newcomers to try out Mario's foray into the RPG genre. Ubisoft had a rough year in 2024. Skull and Bones finally released after 11 years in development to mixed reviews and self-titled as a quadruple A game. Star Wars Outlaws, although not a bad game, fell under Ubi's sales expectations, and their biggest release this year in Assassin's Creed Shadows has been delayed to 2025. But hey, at least we got a new Prince of Persia game. 2 of them even. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is one of the best Metroidvanias that I've played. Sprawling areas that are all different from one another, challenging puzzles that reward the player for seeking them out, and very fun mechanics that keep the player invested in Sargon's ever-growing movement capabilities. The 2 best things about the game has to be the combat and style. Sargon can dart and dash and chain a multitude of combos together, and it's also satisfying to pull off. And you've got these finisher moves that have this raw energy to it, especially in those boss fights. Such a major highlight from the game. The game feels great to play. I've yet to try the DLC, but as a base game experience, it's superb. Can't wait to see these devs work on the next Rayman game. Donkey is one of my favorite YouTubers, so when he announced that he was creating his own publishing label called Big Mode and said he would only publish state-of-the-art games, I was excited to see what their first game would be, and we got Animal Well. And there is no game quite like Animal Well. I guess you could say it's the first well-like game. Okay, yeah. Through the means of a Metroidvania, Animal Well takes away all the combat and puts puzzles in their place instead. It's very weird as it changes the way you deal with all the weird animals the game puts you up against, as you're always going to be the prey in any dangerous situation. What's even weirder are the vibes. It's got this neon, retro, synthwave look to it that's just ominous yet comforting. Animal Well is that type of game where you turn off the lights, lay back and kick your feet up and just play. An abundance of secrets lie waiting for you, and all the tools you unlock as the game progresses have quite a lot of depth to it. Truly a very complex and deep game that was not intended as a well joke. Just like Animal Well, this game also has immaculate vibes. Donkey Kong Country 2. I'll get the basic stuff out of the way. Yes, this game has great level design. Yes, this game has the right amount of challenge. Yes, this game has fun gimmicks. And yes, the game looks great too, still holding up nearly 30 years since its release. What elevates this experience to a whole other plane? The music. I can guarantee you've heard Donkey Kong Country 2's soundtrack, unless if you aren't a gamer. In that case, hi, hello, I do hope you're enjoying this game-related video, but still, there's a good chance you've heard its music on other corners of the internet. From Stickerbush Symphony to Forest Interlude, these are some of the greatest pieces of video game music, and played with the aesthetic of Donkey Kong Country 2 brings up these strong feelings of nostalgia. I mean, I wasn't even alive when it released back in 1995, but it still feels nostalgic and emotional whenever hearing its music, and playing through the game was just a bramble blast all the way through. Xenoblade Chronicles is a pretty hard game to talk about. It's just hard to really talk about what makes it special. Xenoblade has a very special feel to it as you cross the 2 giant titans that form the 2 continents of Bionis and Mechonis, learn about the different peoples, bond with the party members, and go on an adventure that'll bring you on a roller coaster of emotions. Xenoblade is a journey through and through with a combat system that acts more as a supplement to the experience while still having depth and being enjoyable to interact with. Although I did have problems with some of the side quests, which were basically fetch quests, it was always fun to unearth new corners of this vast world. Add a phenomenal soundtrack to every single moment in this game, and it just hits. Can't wait to try out the rest of the series soon. In many ways, I'd say that FF7 Rebirth plays a lot like Xenoblade Chronicles. Massive areas for you to explore, fetch quests, a great cast, a very moving story, and an accompanying soundtrack that slaps. Rebirth does, however, add more to this formula. It adds more quest variety, a stellar blend of action and turn-based combat, lots of minigames, some more quests, and more minigames, and more quests, and yes, I do think there's quite a lot of bloat in FF7 Rebirth, especially in the late game, but I decided to skip a lot of those late game quests because the story was what I was after. Where will the unknown journey stray away from the original game story? Well, stray it did, and I'm not sure where the story is going to go next. I'll give Rebirth a lot of points for not playing the modern open world rules, but rather take inspiration from older games in how their open worlds are designed. Only wish I knew what they were on when writing the story because I'm still confused by its ending. Persona 3. Now, I will say, my thoughts on this game have changed a lot since I beat it way back at the start of the year. Tartarus gets a bit too repetitive, not enough areas to explore in the game, and there are some not so fun social links. On the contrary though, it's got really engaging combat, looks incredible in every setting, and has a soundtrack that not many games can rival. What made the game rank so highly for me? The story. Persona 3's story is something that I don't see enough people talk about. Sure, in the Persona and Atlus games fandom, it is regarded as one of the best stories Atlus has told, but in the wider gaming space, it's not talked about enough. Its cast with amazing voice work flows so well between one another. You have so much time to grow with these characters over the wonderful calendar system these games are known for, and when those story beats hit, oh man, do they hit. From its themes of life and death, living life to the fullest, and Memento Mori, this isn't my favorite Atlus story, but the themes the game conveyed are truly one of the best. Right, so before I get into the top 5, I want to highlight 2 final honorable mentions. Both of these games could make the list, but I think it would be best to have them here as honorable mentions. First, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. I left it off the list mainly because it's an expansion. Like Phantom Liberty last year, it's one of the best gaming experiences this year, but I think it's fair to give full games a shot, rather than having Elden Ring in the top 3 like in 2022. But yeah, Shadow of the Erdtree is more Elden Ring, and that's as good as any reason to convince someone to play the expansion. Second game, Hades 2. It's more Hades, but better. However, I want to hold off on putting it on the list as it's still in early access. But wow, so far it's really exceeded my expectations, and I'm saying that as someone who has Hades as one of their top 3 games of all time. So take that as you wish. Astrobot was a joy to play through and through. It's wonderful, whimsical, and you can really feel the passion this game oozes. No, really, you can actually feel the game through the DualSense controller. Literally, Team Asobi is the only dev that makes the most use out of the PS5's incredible controller, and makes the game that much more fun. You can feel the games through the touch, adding that immersive experience. You can feel the particle effects, how the environment shapes around you, and how Astrobot interacts with the world. It all works tremendously, just like the game. Engaging secrets, linear levels with lots of fun secrets to find, and the very rewarding cameo bots from series like Resident Evil and Persona. Although the game might be on the easier side despite having a tough final level, I'd recommend this game to anyone who is a fan of the PlayStation brand and their history. Not sure how this game eluded me for so long, but hey, better late than never, right? Super Mario World has long sat atop the hill as one of the best 2D platformers ever, and 30 years later, it still deserves its spot. When reviewing games that released a long time ago, it's always important to understand the context it was made in, which comes down to the power of the hardware it was made for and its limitations. Some games have wonky controls, whilst others just look bad compared to what we're used to seeing in today's games, but Super Mario World? Despite the many limitations, the game holds up wonderfully. A vibrant art style where the background looks great, the enemies pop out, where you can see the charm that binds it all together, fun power-ups like the cape and Yoshi, both of which give you new ways to deal with the challenges the game poses, and this challenge is challenging. Super Mario World is no easy game, with tons of hard jumps and challenging platforming and secret exits that have you replaying levels to find their sequence and progress or just unlock more of the world. There is so much to this game, and I was having a blast all the way through. One of the best 2D platformers of all time, and importantly, one of the best games of all time. Oh boy, where do I start with this one? I don't want to say too much about it because it's something that you should experience for yourself, but mostly it's because I want to make a full-fledged video on Silent Hill 2 at some point. For a game that's been spoiled to the ends of the earth, I was surprised how little I knew about this game. All I knew was that there was a guy called James Sunderland, there is this cool looking pizza box head, town is called Silent Hill, and there's a dog ending. If you don't know what that means, don't worry, I won't explain it. The game, however, is superb. I have to admit, I was a Bloober skeptic, and a lot of their stuff that I've seen just didn't look great or appealing at all or even scary, but man did they knock it out of the park with this one. This has to be one of the scariest games of all time, with art direction and monster design that keeps you on edge, a weird setting that feels like you're in a lucid dream, and the audio design. This game has by far the best audio design I've heard in a game. Multiple times during my playthrough I had to take look backs because I thought I heard something coming from inside my room. Maybe it was, I hear it now as well, but yeah. This game rules, and you should play it. It's one of my favorite survival horror games, sitting nicely beside RE2 Remake, and I do have to say, the narrative of Silent Hill 2 has to be one of the best stories in fiction ever. Best indie game this year. Balatro. Balatro is very simple. It's a poker roguelike. That's it. That's the entire game. No complex story, no complex graphics, just pure gameplay, and that's what makes Balatro so great. By taking such a simple game such as poker, but adding so many twists to it, it's a lot more fun than any regular match of poker could be. You got joker cards that buff your hands, tarot cards that can change the way you play, with boss binds that put your skills and preparation to the test. It's a bit like Vampire Survivors, where it feels super rewarding to keep playing. Seeing your hands increase in value as you progress in a run is super satisfying. Hey, take it from Balatro. Great games don't need to have a great story to be great, or need a story at all. Yeah, it had to be this. Metaphor ReFantazio is an astronomical achievement in gaming. Not only do I think it's Katsuro Hashino's best work at Atlas, it's a superb evolution of the Persona formula. It also, like FF7 Rebirth, feels like an old school type of game, but this time in just the vibes. You're on this grand adventure across the United Kingdom of Uchronia, finding new party members, meeting new side characters, and just learning more about the incredible lore in this fascinating world. All the characters here are so charming and you're always invested in what they're talking about. It improves upon Persona's social link systems with no bad storylines at all, has some of the most visually striking scenes ever, and a narrative that digs its teeth deep into you and never lets go. And its combat, using SMT's press turn system, works wonders in keeping every battle exciting. Also thanks to the job system in the form of archetypes, letting you decide how you want your characters to play at any given moment. And how can I forget the soundtrack? The soundtrack for Metaphor is sublime. From its sad moments, moments of rest, action set pieces, Shoji Meguro made a soundtrack so different from anything he's previously worked on, it's perfect. But my favorite part about Metaphor? It has to be the story. It's a story that deals with a lot of themes, from discrimination to struggles for power, and the game doesn't tread lightly around them either. It makes itself heard, and it really hits home how this game is a metaphor for our real world. Someone said that Metaphor ReFantazio is Atlas's equivalent of From Software's Elden Ring moment, and I couldn't say it any better myself. Game of the year, easy. And with that, another year has come to an end. I want to thank you guys for watching the videos to the end and for the support on the channel throughout this year. It really means a lot. I've got some great ideas for new videos, but they'll have to wait for next year. I'm going to take a mini break, so I guess I'll see you guys in the next year. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, night, week, holiday season, and new year. And with that, Storm out.